Hi, my name is Nick, and this right here is the Ford Mustang Dark Horse, the hardcore track focus version, and this features a little bit more power compared to the standard version, along with an upgraded suspension and a few other additional highlights which I will run you through because this is going to be a full detailed review. And if you are new to the channel, I feature Australian car reviews on brand new vehicles and modern classics. So give this video a like, share, subscribe and hit that bell, and let's get straight into the video. Before we start, let's talk about some of the key things that you need to know before you walk into a showroom. Firstly, all 1,000 units that were allocated for Australia have been sold out. So unless if you get someone's allocation or if you find one on car sales and pay that premium, your only option is to buy the standard version, and on your screen is a quick breakdown of the current MY25 model range. And in terms of rivals, well, there aren't any with a 5-litre naturally aspirated V8, especially at this price range. So I think the closest competitor to the Dark Horse would have to be the BMW M4 CS. And finally, when it comes to ownership, servicing and running costs, everything you need to know is on your screen right now. Moving on to styling. So the external colour is unique to this Dark Horse model, and I think it looks fantastic, especially when the sun hits it. And it's also complemented by the dark highlights on the bonnet that says Dark Horse. The headlight housing has also been blacked out, and there are also some additional dark decals down the bottom here. And finally, automatic LED headlights with LED DRLs and sequential indicators to give the Mustang that premium touch. Moving on to the side view, the Dark Horse features 19-inch charcoal grey wheels that are wrapped in Pirelli P0 tyres and complemented by the blue Brembo brake calipers. And looking further down the side, a Dark Horse logo, dark privacy glass, and finally a black roof. And now coming to the rear, at the back you have a Dark Horse logo on that boot lid, a larger rear spoiler, and the classic retro themed LED taillights. And this is pretty cool. There are decals showing each and every generation of Mustang. And finally, integrated within that rear diffuser, 4 large exhaust pipes that sound like this. And now the interior. So before you climb inside, this features a remote key, keyless entry, walk up and walk away door locking and unlocking, and finally push button ignition. And starting off with presentation, it does feel and look a bit more premium compared to previous generations of the Mustang. And this, of course, being a Dark Horse model, all of the chrome has been replaced by these black inserts. There's also blue stitching, a chassis build number, blue synthetic leather with suede inserts, and that also extends onto the seats as well. You also get a 3D printed titanium gear shifter and a leather accented steering wheel with a flat bottomed section, and that is also complemented by the suede inserts. And I do also like this 3D effect carbon material, and build quality is also pretty good. The door slam feels okay, and the center armrest is also soft, and you also get soft padding along here. Up the top here feels okay, but when you do look lower down, it does get a bit hard and plasticky, even on the bottom of the doors, and even where you grip onto the door handle, that doesn't feel all that great. And moving on to comfort, you get dual zone climate control with a dedicated climate menu, and that button is to heat the steering wheel. But these Recaro seats don't offer seat heating and ventilation, but on the plus side, they are much more comfortable compared to what is featured in the standard Mustang, and they can be electronically controlled partially, and additionally for the driver, electric lumbar support and a manual tilt and reach steering column. Now moving on to infotainment, it all runs off this 13.2-inch touchscreen, which also entails a volume dial and some shortcut buttons on the steering wheel. And this system does take a bit of time getting used to first go, but overall it is pretty simple. And for key features, this has voice recognition that also works with Siri integration, inbuilt satellite navigation with 3D mapping, a 12-speaker B&O sound system, AM, FM, DAB with USB and Bluetooth, and for smartphone integration, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which are both wireless. And now moving on to safety. If I flick it into reverse, there's a surround view camera which you can enhance, but it is worth pointing out that there are no front sensors, so rear parking sensors with a rear cross traffic alert, but you do get autonomous emergency braking and blind spot monitoring on the 2 door mirrors, plus a lane keeping assistant with active lane assist, adaptive cruise control that keeps you within distance between yourself and the vehicle in front, and also an active steering assist, and finally speed sign recognition. Moving on to the drive modes, using these buttons you can swap it from custom, normal, sport, racetrack, drag strip and slippery, and as you can see the graphics look pretty cool. And if I click on the Mustang tab, this is going to take you into My Mustang, where you can open and close the exhaust, and from here you can also adjust the ambient lighting, and my favourite function, cluster theme. So this is what the cluster looks like in normal, sport, racetrack and calm, and you can also pick out some retro themed ones as well. This here is classic 67 to 68, Fox Body 87 to 93, and SVT Cobra 99 to 2001. And you can also change the information in the center looking at fuel consumption, navigation directions, media functions and other additional data. And going back into this configuration, here you'll find acceleration timer, brake performance, lap timer, launch settings and shift indicator. And moving over to the right hand side, a drift brake feature, which is all hooked up to this electronic parking brake to make it easier performing drifts. There's also a line lock feature which locks the front wheels and spins the back wheels so you can perform burnouts, and of course launch control and rev matching. Finally, for practicality and connectivity, you've got a wireless phone charging pad down the bottom here with a 12-volt socket, USB-C and A port, along with 2 cup holders over in the center, some center storage with another 12-volt socket, and the glove box is also a decent size. Up the top here, a sunglasses holder, and on the doors, small little door pockets. Here in the back with this seat set in my driving position, as you can see, knee room is pretty limited and so is toe room and headroom. My head is touching the glass. So for smaller adults or children, they should be fine for a short journey. And you do also get ISOFIX points on the 2 outboard seats and 2 top tether points above me. Kodork hangers on either side, but overall, hard plastic around, but you do get this lever here to move the seat forwards and backwards, so it isn't too bad. And now moving on to boot space. So as you can see back here, 408 litres of boot volume, which does make the back section big enough for 2 carry-on suitcases, but for golf clubs you might struggle because the opening is quite narrow and the floor does sit down pretty deep, but compared to some of the other sporty rivals, boot space is still pretty reasonable, and you can also drop down the second row seats if you need additional space. And looking around, no tie-down points or shopping bag hooks, but you do get a big subwoofer off to the right-hand side, and under here, no spare tyre, just a compressor for the run-flat tyres. Before we go for a drive, let's talk about the powertrain. So like the standard Mustang, you get a 5-litre naturally aspirated petrol V8 that sends power to the rear wheels through a limited slip differential. And in terms of some of the changes to the Dark Horse, the cooling system has been upgraded for track driving, and this also features a sportier Tremec 6-speed manual from the Shelby GT350, MagneRide controlled suspension, which improves ride comfort and cornering capabilities, wider tyres as well, and a bit more power. So the question is, do these small changes make a big impact? Well, let's find out. And now, moving on to the driving impressions. Over the bonnet, there's decent forward visibility, but it is worth pointing out that the front does stick out a bit, so that is something worth keeping in mind going over driveways. But side vision is great, the wing mirrors are a good size. However, rear vision is a bit tight and you do have a bit of a blind spot on that C-pillar. And in terms of controls, electronic parking brake, and unique to the Dark Horse, a Tremec 6-speed manual, which I've got to say it's a fantastic gearbox. And it also rev matches. And in addition to some of the other changes, the steering ratio is a bit more direct compared to the standard version, so they've recalibrated the steering, and this also sits on MagneRide suspension. So going through corners, it does feel more performance orientated in terms of dynamics, and on the road it is a little bit better compared to a standard 5-litre Mustang without the MagneRide option ticked. But it's never going to be as luxurious like a BMW M3 or a C63 Mercedes AMG. The brakes are actually really good. They're smooth at the same time, they're not lurchy, but when you do build up speed, you'll really need those to actually work. So yeah, for spirited driving, they are pretty good. This Mustang also has a limited slip differential, so if you do push this too hard, you can flick out the back quite easily, but there is some sense of control. You've got sticky Pirelli tyres. It isn't a hard car to drive fast, but it's still just as leery like a muscle car, so if you drop down a gear, it still sounds fantastic. Now, time for some spirited driving. I'm going to put the car in sport, put the steering in sport, and open up the exhaust, downshift. Makes a fantastic noise, and it is quick. And moving on to driver assistance, the adaptive cruise control works fine on the motorway, and everything is easy to configure within that screen. The only thing I did notice, the active steering assist does interfere if you don't shake the wheel now and then, so even if you've got your hands on the steering wheel, it'll start beeping at you thinking that you don't have your hands on the wheel. But apart from that, everything is fine from that perspective. And finally, in terms of fuel consumption, on your screen is the combined figure matched with what I was able to achieve, and I thought that was pretty reasonable for a V8, and that was driving up to Bathurst, driving around the city and a bit of town driving. And with my driving impressions out of the way, let's now wrap up with a verdict. So then, a conclusion. Well, you've got to love a naturally aspirated V8 paired with a 6-speed manual. It is just a combination that is getting rarer and rarer to find on a brand new car. And thanks to some of the performance upgrades and visual enhancements with the Dark Horse, it is a fantastic model series. But there is a downside, they're all sold out. So if you were to buy one on the second-hand market or take someone's allocation, you are going to pay a premium. And therefore, wouldn't it be better to just pick out a 5-litre Mustang, option for the Recaro seats and the MagneRide suspension package? I'm not so sure, but why don't you let me know your feedback in the comments down below? Or would you pick something entirely different? Again, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell. And I will see you in the next film. Thanks for watching.